Now, artificial intelligence has become a cornerstone of innovation, yet the challenge of navigating AI within the complexities of a culturally diverse world has become evident. Today, we look into AI as not only a mirror that reflects technological aspirations, but biases and fears as well. Johan Steyn, AI and automation thought leader and BusinessDay contributor, joins us now with his insights on how to effectively manage the complexities of cultural diversity in AI applications. Johan, thank you for your time and good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, Johan, this was actually all sparked by the Olympics opening ceremony. Let's talk about that. That had a lot of tongues going.
Absolutely. Look, firstly, it was so long that I passed out after a while, although it was amazing. But I think the controversy came around the Greek mythology, the view of Bacchus and the cohort. And the people who are familiar with Greek mythology, or for that matter, philosophy even, would have recognized it immediately. But that's a minority of people, as we know. A lot of people said it looked like an imitation of the Last Supper. A lot of people were offended, understandably so. But it just made me think, and that's why I wrote the article, that we see through a specific cultural lens. And AI and chatbots and facial recognition, all those things also come at us. We see it through a cultural lens. And I think the message I wanted to make through that article is that we have to be specifically sensitive to the fact that it's not just a global north or a Los Angeles or a Silicon Valley view, especially in Africa. It was quite a controversy. There's so much on social media, but it's also because people don't understand the mythology behind it.
When we think of large language models, for instance, where I think of algorithms, Johan, all of these have human input to some degree, and I guess that's where the culture lens would come in. Let's talk about that process, of how this artificial intelligence can gain a human lens, and along with that human lens would come certain biases, certain fears, and certain cultural norms and expectations.
Yeah. Look, large language models, and I call this a post-chat GPT world that we live in, they have increased in understanding and in reasoning a great deal. There's a lot of talk that in the next 3 to 5 years, these models like OpenAI's ChatGPT or Google's Gemini and others will be about 1,000 times more powerful than they are now, which is scary and interesting. But the data they are trained on is the so-called global north, so European data, Northern American data, potentially Chinese and Middle Eastern data. The reasoning capability almost at this stage makes me feel that it's sentient, that it's conscious, which we know it's not. But again, when we look at it from a South African or an African context point of view, the responses it gives me, even when I ask it in Afrikaans, which is my native language, but I've also spoken to friends who speak Zulu or Xhosa, there are nuances in the responses that are almost offensive because it's not trained on our languages. And I think the point that we have that I'm making, especially for South African and African businesses, is don't just copy and paste and incorporate this technology without testing it, whether it actually speaks the languages and the nuances that we in Africa speak. And then facial recognition is the same. Even today, even though it's improved so much over the last few years, it still struggles with recognizing female faces and non-Caucasian faces because of how it's been developed and how it's been trained. So something that I'll say often in these recordings and these conversations is we have to develop African solutions by Africans for Africa. And we should be aware of these problems that can come into these models if we don't localize it enough.
What is interesting here, I think, Johan, it also tells me that there is a whole new part of AI that is yet to emerge from the continent that might, not even develop our own large language models, but certainly brings what we have on board, interrogates it, brings on some training here. And what I'm always concerned about here is the fact that we won't move at the right pace. That the biases will be so deeply embedded in there sooner than we can get on in, ask the difficult questions, review the algorithms. I'm just keen to get your thoughts on that. Our ability to respond, to ensure that what is out there does respond to Africa the way that it should?
Firstly, do we have enough talent in Africa and South Africa? Absolutely. Is our educational, both secondary and tertiary, aligned to getting us where we need to go? I don't think so, and that's a whole other conversation, and I think we need to do a lot of work on that. Funding is the other thing, the ability to scale the platforms that we build in Africa and South Africa. A key thing is that when especially a business looks at incorporating this kind of technology, large language models, generative AI and the like, I always say make sure that your core team is a diverse team, ethnically diverse, language diverse, obviously gender diverse, because we will potentially build in biases, which we don't mean in a bad way, not because we're bad people, but we need people from a segment of the customers that we are serving, or the part of the population that we are serving, to make sure that we are actually, in the way we build these models to converse with our customers and with people, that it actually incorporates the symbolism that we need. And I wanted to just quickly say something on symbolism, which brings me back to the Olympics. A great example is the swastika, which was the symbol of the Nazis in the Second World War. Now, that symbol originated thousands of years before. It's essentially a symbol of the 4 rivers flowing from the Garden of Eden that we read about in Genesis. We see it in Hinduism and Buddhism. But the Nazis really actually almost hijacked that symbol. But today, if you ask people what do they see, they will think about the Nazis with all the emotions, rightfully, that comes with that. So a symbol carries so much when it comes to what we see. Now, even today, when you Google or search for AI, robotics, etc., you will primarily see robots or images that look like Caucasian men. And again, we need to rechange and reincorporate the narrative that we as Africans, especially to our youngsters, only 3% of people in Africa who enter data science are females. Because of the narrative, it's a man's world and it's a white man's world, which is not even a political conversation. So that symbolism, that the images that we build into these platforms needs to be uniquely African. 3,000 languages and dialects, totally underserved by this technology. I cannot stress more how important that it is. We have the talent. We don't have the education, I think, and the way we incorporate it is not diverse enough.
Very interesting indeed, Johan. Thank you for this fascinating conversation today. Always a pleasure speaking to you. That was Johan Steyn, AI and automation thought leader and Business Day contributor.